You are 3 seconds from destroying something you cannot rebuild. Your jaw, your chest, your hands doing that slow curl. The person in front of you has no idea they are 4 seconds away from seeing a version of you that you will spend the next week trying to undo. And here's the thing nobody ever tells you. Trying to calm down right now is making it worse. Not because you're weak, because of what adrenaline does to your prefrontal cortex in the first 240 seconds of a rage spiral. And if you don't know what I'm about to tell you, you will keep losing that fight. Every single time. Stay, because this is the most important 4 minutes of psychology you will hear this year. I'm Dr. Silas Kincaid, behavioral neuroscience, applied psychology, and this channel exists for exactly one type of person, someone who is done being ambushed by their own nervous system. Not someone looking for inspiration, not someone looking for a motivational quote to screenshot, someone who wants the mechanism, the wiring diagram, the actual protocol that works when your biology is screaming at you to destroy something you love. If that's you, you've found your place. Today, I'm handing you what I call the Rage Reset, a 4-step physiological circuit breaker built on neuroscience, behavioral therapy, and high-performance emotional regulation research. It works in 240 seconds, and I'm going to show you exactly why it works. Not just that it works, because understanding the mechanism is the only way it sticks under pressure. Here's what we're covering. Why your brain physically cannot respond to just calm down. The 240-second biological window that determines whether you explode or reset. The cold water override that drops your heart rate in under 60 seconds. The cognitive trick that converts raw rage into manageable data. And the one sentence that ends a conflict without triggering abandonment. All of that in this video. Let's get into it. Let me take you inside your own skull for a moment. Right now, your brain is running 2 systems simultaneously. The first is your prefrontal cortex, the CEO. It handles logic, consequences, language, empathy, the ability to hold back the thing you're about to say. It is the reason you are a functional adult in most situations. The second is your amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure buried in your temporal lobe. It is ancient, reptilian. It does not know about your mortgage, your marriage, or what your boss will think of you on Monday morning. It knows one thing: threat elimination. Full stop. Here is what happens the moment someone cuts you off in traffic, or your partner uses that tone, or your boss emails you at 9 p.m. again. The sensory signal, that tone of voice, that facial expression, that specific phrase hits your thalamus in milliseconds. The thalamus has to decide, does this go upstairs to the rational brain for careful processing, or does it shortcut directly to the amygdala for an emergency response? When the signal registers as a threat, even an emotional threat, the amygdala gets the call first. And it doesn't wait for permission. It fires. Adrenaline floods the system, cortisol spikes, your heart rate surges, blood floods your muscles, digestion halts, vision narrows. Your thinking, your actual cognitive flexibility is gone. Neuroscientists call this the amygdala hijack, coined by Daniel Goleman, rooted in the neural pathway research of Joseph LeDuc. The rational brain doesn't go offline gradually. It gets severed, like a circuit breaker tripping in a storm. And you can feel the exact moment it happens. That sudden heat bloom in the chest, the tunnel vision, the way time collapses, the words coming out of your mouth before you decided to say them. That is not a character flaw. That is not who you are. That is 200,000-year-old biology responding to an interpersonal disagreement, the same way it would respond to a predator on the savannah. The hardware is ancient, the situation is modern, and the mismatch is costing you relationships, jobs, and self-respect. But here is where it gets darker, because here is the reason everything you've been told fails in this moment. When you're at peak hijack and someone tells you to just calm down, the resentment triples, the cortisol spikes harder, the conflict escalates. Why? Because calm down is a command that requires your prefrontal cortex to execute, and your prefrontal cortex has been temporarily shut offline. Telling an angry person to calm down is like telling a car with a severed brake line to slow down. The intent is there, the mechanism is gone. This is not a willpower problem. This is a plumbing problem, and it requires a plumbing solution. Which brings us to the window, the 4-minute window that most people don't know they have. Here is the number that changes everything. 4 Minutes. When your system is flooded with adrenaline during an emotional hijack, that adrenaline has a physiological half-life of approximately 4 minutes. This is documented across multiple studies in psychophysiology. The raw chemical fuel that is making you feel like you have to act right now begins to metabolically degrade inside 240 seconds. Your body is trying to save you. But here's the trap that most people walk straight into, and it ruins the entire window. In those 240 seconds, you start thinking about the fight. You replay what they said. You start building your case. You mentally rehearse the perfect, devastating response. And every single time you run that simulation, every replay, your body reads it as a new threat and releases another wave of adrenaline. The thought alone is enough to keep the cocktail boiling. So your body is cooling. Your mind is reheating. You are not having one explosion. You're having a chain reaction, each mental replay igniting the next surge. This is why people describe being furious for hours or days over something that happened in a single moment. The original incident was the spark. The rumination is the fuel line. The 240-second window is your biological mercy. The body's own chemistry is actively trying to pull you back from the edge every single time. And most people spend that entire window pouring accelerant on the fire. Here is what you do instead. You make a shift. And this shift is harder than any tool I'm about to give you. Not because it's complicated, but because it runs directly against every instinct the amygdala is firing. You move from reactive mode, inside the emotion, identified with it, defined by it, to observational mode, where a small part of you becomes a witness to what is happening in your own nervous system. Not a judge, not a therapist, a witness. I notice heat in my chest. I notice my breath has gone shallow. I notice my hands are clenched. That micro shift from I am furious to I am noticing fury is the entry point. That is the door. On the other side of the door are the tools. Let's walk through them. The fastest physiological override currently documented in behavioral science is embarrassingly low tech. And I mean that. When I tell you this, your first reaction might be, that can't be it. It is. Cold water on your face. Not a metaphor, not a mindfulness exercise. Actual cold water, actual face. Here is the mechanism. You have a hardwired autonomic response built into your nervous system and into the nervous systems of virtually every mammal on the planet.
It is called the mammalian dive reflex. When cold water contacts the face, specifically the forehead, temples, and area around the eyes, your vagus nerve activates. Parasympathetic dominance kicks in. Heart rate drops. Cortisol response begins to dampen. Your nervous system physically shifts from fight or flight into rest and regulate. This happens in 30 to 60 seconds. You are not thinking your way out of the hijack. You are shocking your way out of it through hardware that evolved millions of years before your amygdala did. If you have access to a sink, use it. If you have ice, hold it in your palms. The shock to the peripheral nervous system sends a competing signal loud enough to interrupt the hijack loop. Now, I know what just went through your mind. Dr. Kincaid, I am not going to excuse myself mid-argument to go find a sink. You're right. You won't always have that option. So here is the second tool, one you can deploy anywhere, invisibly, in under 90 seconds. No one around you will know you're doing it. During an amygdala hijack, you are time traveling. Your brain is either in the past, replaying the injury, the betrayal, the humiliation, or in the future, catastrophizing the consequences, imagining worst-case outcomes. Neither of those places is real right now, but your nervous system doesn't know that. It is responding to the simulation as if it were live. Sensory grounding pulls you back into the present by force, not by willpower, by attention. Here is the sequence, delivered silently and internally. 5 things you can see right now in this room. 4 things you can physically feel: the floor under your feet, the temperature of the air, the weight of your body in the chair. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 slow, deliberate exhale. This works because sensory input is processed in the parietal and occipital lobes, entirely separate neural real estate from the amygdala's threat loop. You are giving your brain a competing task, a task that requires present-moment attention and cannot be executed while simultaneously running an anger simulation. Your heart rate begins to drop. The heat in your chest begins to dissipate. Language starts coming back online. But we are not done. Because the fire is out, the ember is still hot, and unless we address what the mind is telling you about this situation, that ember reignites the moment the conversation resumes. This is the section that separates people who manage anger from people who transform it. Because here is what your mind is doing during peak emotional state, and this part matters. The internal story your brain is generating is not the truth. It is a threat-optimized hallucination. It takes every charitable interpretation of the situation and silently discards it. It takes the most threatening interpretation, the one that confirms the deepest fear and amplifies it. It assigns motive, malice, and meaning with zero actual data, and then presents those conclusions to you as obvious facts. They always do this. They obviously don't respect me, and nothing ever changes. These are not observations. These are prosecutorial arguments generated by a brain in survival mode. And they are specifically designed to escalate your emotional state because escalation is exactly what the hijacked amygdala is trying to produce. So, we interrupt the narrative with two tools. The first comes from the work of Matthew Lieberman and his team at UCLA. Their research demonstrated that naming an emotion, specifically and accurately, produces a measurable reduction in amygdala activity. Not suppressing it, not denying it, naming it. I'm noticing what feels like humiliation underneath this anger. I'm noticing what feels like fear of being dismissed. I'm noticing grief. What labeling does is convert a raw, flooding, overwhelming experience into a cognitive data point. It moves the experience from the emotional processing center into the language processing center, from consuming to categorical, from I am this to I am noticing this. That shift is neurological, it is measurable on a brain scan, and it is available to you right now in any moment for free. The second tool comes from research by Kross at Michigan University. His work shows that referencing yourself by your own name during moments of emotional stress rather than I produces significant reductions in both cognitive and emotional reactivity. Not why am I reacting this way right now, but why is Silas reacting this way right now? This sounds strange. It works anyway. Because the brain processes third-person self-referencing in a slightly different neural network than first person, one that carries less emotional loading. You become, briefly, a character you're observing rather than a first-person experience you are drowning inside. And here's what that distance allows you to do, what it makes possible that was impossible 3 minutes ago. It allows you to ask the question the amygdala absolutely does not want you to ask. What is actually true here, and what am I adding? Not who is right. That's a debate. That's escalation with better vocabulary. But what is the most accurate description of what just happened, without the motive attribution, without the never and always, without the catastrophized future? When you can hold that question, even for 10 seconds, you have your prefrontal cortex back online. You are back in your body. You are back in the negotiation of your own emotional experience rather than being held hostage by it. Now you can speak. Now you can re-enter. Here is where most psychology advice collapses. It gives you tools for managing yourself internally and then walks you back into the exact same conversation with no script for the external reality, which is still there, unchanged. The other person is still standing across from you. The tension is still in the room, and if you walk back in without a protocol, all the internal work you just did gets detonated in the first 10 seconds. So here's the protocol. You need a tactical timeout. And I want to be precise about what that is because most people get this wrong in a way that actually makes things worse. A tactical timeout is not storming out without explanation. It is not going silent for 3 days as emotional punishment. It is not saying, I'm done, and leaving the other person drowning in abandonment anxiety. A tactical timeout is a clear, calm, time-bounded communication, and it sounds like this. I want to work through this with you. I'm not in a place right now where I can do that well. Give me 20 minutes, I'll come back, and I'll actually be able to hear you. That sentence does 4 things at once. It signals you are not abandoning the conflict, you are protecting the quality of its resolution. It names your internal state without blame or accusation. It gives the other person a concrete expectation, which is what prevents abandonment panic. And it creates a re-entry commitment that you now have to honor. The 20 minutes is not a guideline, it is biology. Research by the Gottman Institute on emotional flooding shows that once heart rate exceeds approximately 100 beats per minute during interpersonal conflict, the capacity for productive resolution collapses entirely. You need a minimum of 20 minutes of genuine distraction, not rumination, for physiological return to baseline.
The key word is distraction, not isolation, not stewing, not mentally rehearsing your argument. Walk. Move your body, wash dishes, put headphones in. Give your brain a competing input strong enough to interrupt the replay loop. Then you come back, not with a verdict, with a question. Can you help me understand what you needed from me in that moment? That question is a pattern interrupt. It repositions the other person as someone with a valid internal experience rather than an opponent to be defeated. It shifts the dynamic from combat to collaboration. This is hard. This asks everything of you. But it is the exact difference between a conflict that erodes a relationship over years and a conflict that over time builds one. Everything we've covered so far is acute intervention. The rage reset is an emergency protocol. It works. But if you find yourself reaching for it repeatedly, the same triggers, the same people, the same categories of situation dragging you back to the 240-second window, then the rage reset is treating the symptom. It's time to treat the source. This is the rage map, and this is the part of the video I want you to actually remember tomorrow. A rage map is not a journal. It is not therapy homework. It is intelligence gathering on your own nervous system. Here's the protocol. For 2 weeks, after any significant moment of anger, whether you handled it well or not, you write down 4 things. The trigger. What happened? Exactly, factually, as precisely as a police report. The first physical sensation. Where did you feel it first? Chest, jaw, shoulders? The story your mind told. What did you conclude about that person's motives in that moment? And the emotion underneath the anger, not the anger itself. What was beneath it? Humiliation, fear, grief, helplessness. After 2 weeks, you read it back. The patterns will not be subtle. You will see 2 or 3 recurring trigger categories. You will see 1 or 2 underlying emotional needs showing up repeatedly, needs that keep going unmet in the same categories of situation. This is where anger stops being a problem you manage and becomes data you use. Because most chronic anger is not actually about what it says it's about. It's about something legitimate, a real need, a real value, a real boundary that has found no productive channel for expression. Your amygdala is not malfunctioning. It is trying to protect something that genuinely matters to you. The question is only whether you let it protect that thing through explosion or through clarity. The rage map gives you the clarity. It hands you the language to articulate what you actually need before the moment of crisis, instead of after the damage. And over time, with pattern recognition, with a rage map that becomes a living document of your own emotional architecture, the 240-second window stops feeling like an ambush. It starts feeling like a signal. Something important to me is under threat right now. What is it? How do I want to respond? That question, asked in 4 minutes, changes everything. Let me bring it back to where we started. You are 3 seconds from destroying something you cannot rebuild. But not anymore. Because now you know what your brain is doing. You know the 240-second window and what happens inside it. You know the cold circuit breaker that resets your nervous system in under 60 seconds. You know how to label the emotion, step outside the narrative, and re-enter the conversation as the person you actually want to be. Let me give you the full protocol one more time, clean and complete. Step 1, the cold circuit breaker. Cold water on your face or ice in your hands. Mammalian dive reflex. 30 to 60 seconds, done. Step 2, 5-5-5, sensory grounding. 5 things you see, 4 you feel, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 slow exhale. Pull yourself back into the present moment. Step 3, label and distance. Name the emotion underneath the anger. Shift to third-person self-reference. Ask, what is actually true here, and what am I adding?
Step 4. Tactical timeout with clean re-entry. I want to resolve this with you. Give me 20 minutes. I'll come back ready to actually hear you. And underneath all of it, the rage map, the intelligence operation on your own emotional triggers, the long game that turns reactive into architected. Your anger is not your enemy. It never was. It is a signal from the deepest, most ancient part of your nervous system telling you that something important to you is under threat. The problem is never the anger. The problem is the absence of a protocol for what to do with it. You now have the protocol. The people in your life, the ones you love, the ones you work alongside, the ones you share a home with, they aren't just hoping you use it. They're waiting for you to. If this landed for you today, subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly one reason: to give you the kind of psychology that works in the moments that actually matter. Not theory, not inspiration, not quotes for a screenshot. Applied science for real human situations. The next video goes deeper into this framework, specifically into the verbal patterns that other people use during conflict that are designed, consciously or not, to keep you inside the hijack, and exactly how to diffuse them without surrendering your position. It is some of the most practically useful communication science I've put on this channel. I'm Dr. Silas Kincaid. I'll see you in the next one.